Hey, my name's Chris Mulkey. I wanted to share my testimony with you all. So when I was a kid, I was raised in church, and as I grew up, I wondered if God was real and if the Bible was true about Jesus and heaven and hell. And so when I was in my 20s, I was still an unbeliever, and I ended up in prison for stealing. And so while I was in there, I almost died from alcohol poisoning. And the guy on the ambulance told me, he said, "You're lucky to be alive. I can't believe you're alive." And he told me what my alcohol content was at the time, and it was like almost comatose. And so I remembered what he said, and I thought about what he said, and I also thought about I shot up cocaine one time when I was younger, and it stopped my heart and killed me. And my friend gave me mouth to mouth, and I came back to life. And then on my 21st birthday, I flipped my truck 6 times, and drunk, and walked away unharmed. So those three things really stuck with me, and I started thinking, you know what, maybe there is a God, and maybe there's a heaven and a hell, and maybe I'll even go there one day if it's real. And so I thought, I'm going to find out if God's real while I'm in here. So I started reading the Bible and going to church and Bible study. And one night the pastor said, if there's anybody who doesn't believe in God, just raise your hand. So I raised my hand, and when I did, it was like God supernaturally took all the doubts that I ever had about him away. And I already knew the truth, heard the truth, and it became real in my heart. And I knew that I was going to go to heaven one day because Jesus died for my sins. And so I was a changed man. I quit smoking and cussing, everything right then. And when I got out, though, I started hanging out with this one friend, taking him to church, and which it was a good thing that I was doing that, but somehow I ended up in the car with him one time, and he was smoking, and I ended up smoking a cigarette. The next thing you know, I'm drinking, and pretty soon I turned into this needle junkie from meth, and I was shooting up meth every day for about 10 years, and it was a horrible habit. But what was worse than that was about the last 3 years of that, I learned how to manufacture it, and so I was manufacturing this meth and using it, and I was so scared of dying and going to hell because I knew that's what was going to happen. And so after about 9-10 years of this, I convinced myself that God was going to have mercy on me. Well, so I actually thought that I was going to die and go to heaven, even though, it was, I was on meth and killing myself. And so God proved me wrong one night, and I did too much, and it killed me. And I died and I was falling at a high rate of speed in total darkness, and I knew that I was going to hell. And I thought, man, if I could just say the name Jesus, maybe he'll save me, And so but I was scared. I couldn't talk, and so I had to use all the energy in my whole body and put it into my mouth. I remember I could think so well when this, like, better than I could on this earth. My mind worked really good. And that was the only, but that's not a good thing. You don't want to think real good. That makes it even worse because, you can experience hell to a greater degree than you would if you couldn't think real well, So anyway, I finally said the name Jesus, and when I did, I came to, and God spoke to me, and he said, "Chris, if you want off of meth, you're going back to prison." And so fast forward about a year, I found myself looking out the window of my trailer where I had a meth lab, and I saw the cops. I took off running, and my friend was there, and she got caught with all this stuff. And so I ran out in the woods and for a long ways, and her little dog, caught up with me while I was trying to catch my breath. And I don't know why the dog followed me up there, but it kind of sobered me up, and I got to thinking about what God told me. And so I took the dog, and I walked up out of the woods. I told the cops everything was mine, and they're like, "We know who was with you." They asked me all these questions, and I got really irritated at them and said some things I shouldn't have. And so they said, "Well, we're going to recommend you do the maximum sentence," which at the time was 30 years under the 70% law. So I have to serve 70% of 30 years if they had their way with me. And so I was just like, man, this is really dumb. This was really dumb. And so I was sitting in jail, and after about 2 weeks, the police came and told me that a friend of mine died from a meth lab explosion. Well, he learned how to manufacture meth from me just 2 weeks before that, he was watching. And so I thought, man, this is it. I'm done. And I went to my cell and I cried out to God. And I said, I'm done running from you, God. I'm rededicating my life to you right now. And when I did that, it was all this peace came flooded back to my heart and my mind. And I knew that I was going to go to heaven. And I even said right then, I said, you know what, God, I don't care what they do to me. They can give me my whole life in prison. I'm just glad that I know now that I'm going to go to heaven. I'm not going to die and go to hell, because it's a place you don't want to go. I'd rather spend my life in prison than be where I was at. And I didn't even see it. All I saw was darkness, but I was so scared. It was just this paralyzed fear that you have. And so anyway, God had mercy on me, and he had another plan for my life, and I'm glad I chose it. And so after I rededicated my life to God, they made me a trustee in the jail after saying they would never do that. They did, because they needed someone. And so I got to wash cop cars and paint and do all kinds of things, and this was a little bitty jail. It was like only held like 10, 15 people at the max. And so I was the only trustee for a while, and they really liked me, and I did a really good job for them. And I hadn't been to court yet. Normally they don't even make trustees until you go to court, but God just he gave me a lot of favor with these people, and they really trusted me. And so I was walking outside one day picking up cigarette butts, cleaning up the courtyard, and I found 4 $100 bills. I turned it in, a lady claimed it. She was relatives of people in the courthouse. Then I found a bag of meth in the kitchen. I don't know how it got there, but I turned it in. And so after those chain of events happened, after I rededicated my life to God. And so because of that, the police talked to the judge for me, and he ended up dropping the manufacturing charge and only charged me with possession, which only carried a 2-year sentence. And so I did about 9 months in prison, and several of those months that I was in there was really hard, because I was hated by a lot of people, but I chose to love them and forgive them only by the power of God, because I really didn't want to love them and the things they were saying to me and doing to me, but I ended up forgiving them. And because of that, every one of these people became my friends and started going to church with me. And I counted over 20 of us at night holding our hands one night, praying before we went to bed. And it changed the whole room. There was only 50 people in that room that I was in. And so anyway, God is awesome. And if you guys don't know Jesus and you're addicted to anything, whether it's porn, cigarettes, cussing, God set me free from all those things eventually. It didn't always happen right away, but he can do it. He's powerful, and he loves you, and he's real. And anyway, thank you guys for watching this, and I pray that it blesses you.